Hey everyone, here's an update on how my plants are doing in the Benelux in Northern Europe. As a reminder, this is only about a fifth of my plants, the rest is still at my other place in sunny Barcelona, Spain. In this video, I will talk about color change from yellow to green, flowering in colder climates, and fertilizing San Pedros. So if you have interest in these topics, make sure you watch the video till the end. As you can see, the looks of my adult plants has improved greatly in the past couple of months. They have now a lovely bluish color. When I brought them over 2 years ago, many of them had a yellow tone due to sun exposure in Spain and not enough watering. They have now fully recovered. These were my plants a year ago, and as you can see, they were still much more yellow than they are now. Of my own experience, when the yellowing is recent, like up to about a year, maybe 2, then it can revert to green. If on the contrary the plant has been yellow for years, then it's likely that it will remain yellow forever. And plants that have been yellow for years are likely to eventually die, as they cannot defend themselves well against illnesses. If you're wondering how the transition takes place from yellow to green, here's a video I took last summer. The two plants in the center are starting to get more and more green, but they are completely bright yellow a year earlier. As a comparison, here are the same two plants now. They are now perfectly green, even with a lovely bluish tone. Two of my San Pedros are currently still transitioning from yellow to green. Here's one. And another one. I expect them to be fully green by the end of the summer. Now I'm going to give you a tip for plants that are very yellow. To speed up the recovery process, you can add peat to your watering can. I've only done that to a few plants, not those that were just a bit yellowish, but instead those that were solid bright yellow. And it has made them return to green much faster than if I had been watering with just water. If you want to have an idea of the kind of ratio I've used, in a 4-liter watering can, which is 1 gallon, I peed once, which is not much in volume, less than 10%. Then I topped it up with water. You can water the plants with very diluted pea quite often until they've gone back to yellow. Do not pee directly on the soil, as the concentrated nitrogen might burn the plant or its roots. And keep in mind this trick probably won't work for plants that have been yellow for years, although it costs nothing to try. It's worth noting that for animal welfare reasons, I don't eat meat. Therefore, the nitrogen contents of my pea is going to be lower than one from a meat eater. However, there is still enough nitrogen in my pea for it to work very efficiently to turn a cactus from yellow to green. And one advantage of being on a plant-based diet is that your pea will contain a lot less urea, and therefore won't have much of a smell, which is valuable if you use pea on a lot of plants, or if you have them indoors or inside a greenhouse. I've only used pea on a few bright yellow plants. The rest of them, many of which were just a bit yellowish, all turned back to a beautiful color with just tap water. Why is that? Well, I'm not quite sure, but I think two factors could be at play. The first one is that the sun here is less strong, and there are more cloudy days. The other factor is that I got into the good habit of watering the plants a lot more often than I used to. Currently, I water them twice a week, whereas in Barcelona, I often water them only once every 3 or 4 weeks, which is not very clever on my part considering the sun is much stronger. Admittedly, it's easier to water plants when there aren't too many of them. Hopefully, this good habit of watering them more often will stick with me for the rest of my life, as the plants really seem to appreciate it. I still use the shading structures I have made, but I found they're only necessary when the sun hits hard and it's very hot. The rest of the time I don't shade the plants. And on days that alternate between sun and clouds, there are a lot of days like that in the Benelux, then I don't cover them either. I'm extremely happy with these shading structures for a number of reasons, which I already mentioned in previous videos. But I can't help thinking they would be more useful in Spain, where every day is sunny and the plants turn yellow without shading. As far as growth is concerned, some plants are starting to show signs of etiolation near the tips. I'm not sure why that is. My guess would be either not enough light or not enough warmth, or a combination of the two. The growing season in the Benelux can be strange, sometimes very hot, sometimes quite cold, with a lot of cloudy days. It's a lot less predictable than in Barcelona, where you can expect always warm temperatures, with cloudy days being a lot more rare. Having said that, when it's only the tip that is etiolated, there's still hope that it starts growing fatter again, although it may remain a bit thinner around one spot. Now you might be wondering about flowering. Shortly after my previous video was uploaded, about 2 months ago, I noticed about 20 new bunches of hair on many of my plants, which I was very happy about. Unfortunately, so far they have remained at that stage. In Barcelona, they would have all turned into buds by now. So I don't know whether they take much longer to develop into buds here, or if it's due to some of the colder weeks we've had in the past couple of months. It hasn't been very cold, but it's obviously much cooler than in Barcelona, where these plants flower like crazy. That leads me to think that if I were to stay here long term, a permanent greenhouse where the cacti would stay all year round would be the best solution to ensure abundant flowering. Like this, the plants would benefit from much warmer temperatures, using heating if need be, and they wouldn't suffer from the brutal temperature swings in spring. Here, it feels like spring as a season constantly hesitates between winter and summer. Some days are warm, others are back to cold. If you don't care about flowering and just want to grow San Pedro, then that won't be much of an issue. But for flowering and seed production, I think a good quality permanent greenhouse would be the way to go. Possibly adding powerful LED strips above the plants for cloudy days, which are half the days here. Having said that, flowers are developing on 3 of my plants. One of my Scopulicola goliaths has 3 buds. Once they get to the bud stage, it's quite likely they will develop into flowers. Here, on a large Bridgestilao cutting, we've got a bud that's about to turn into a flower. By the way, these 2 pups at the top don't have the very long spines typical of a Bridgetsi. But if you were to put the same plant under the Barcelona sun, it would grow much longer spines. Spines grow longer with more sun exposure. And here on this little pup, there's no less than 10 flowers on the way, 2 of which have already turned into buds. The rest are still bunches of hair, some of which are getting larger, which gives me hope that there will be more buds forming on this plant. Could such a small pup really take 10 flowers? Absolutely, because it's on a large cutting with enough plant mass to sustain their growth. Believe it or not, that's all I have to show you flower-wise. All I can hope for is that more flowers will develop in the coming weeks and months, but so far, they are standing at the stage where they're extremely tiny bunches of hair, often hard to spot unless you search for them. I didn't realize how easy I had it with the warm Mediterranean weather. Over there, San Pedros grow like a weed and also flower effortlessly. Now, if you're wondering how my younger plants are doing, they are doing really well. Most of these plants were donated by my buddy Tony from Leiden in the Netherlands, who grew them from seeds from my genetics. And they are growing really nice. Considering the very small pots in which they will greatly benefit from being repotted. But I really hesitate to do so, because I'm not sure whether or not I will stay in the Benelux. Like this, in these pots, they are much easier to transport than in larger individual pots. I would just slide a cardboard tube onto each plant, like these tubes from toilet paper rolls, to avoid the plants damaging each other with their spines. And as you can see, the pots are molded together in one single piece of plastic, which makes it much easier to transport. If I remove all of these plants from the pot, you can see that Tony packed the soil very loosely. All the small air gaps in it are beneficial for root development. And such a loose soil also provides really good drainage. On the downside, it means each pot will contain less nutrients, and you're going to have to repot sooner or feed them fertilizer. Here you can see one pot that I prepared myself for comparison. The soil is much more compact. I prefer to push the soil down a bit with my fingers in order to compact it moderately. You're just going to be careful not to push too hard and make the soil too compact, as the roots need oxygen and these cacti also need good drainage. That's why these plants I got from Tony get fed every 10 days during the warm season with a cheap universal organic fertilizer, the kind that gardeners use for tomatoes and other vegetables. I put half the recommended dosage of fertilizer to be on the safe side. And they're growing very nicely, as you can see. They were much smaller when I picked them up from Tony. My larger plants don't need any fertilizer, since my own soil recipe includes about a quarter earthworm castings. Sure, if I were to combine fertilizer with the castings, they would grow even faster. But I prefer to water them with the garden hose, as it's much easier and faster when you have many plants. If I were to use fertilizer, I would have to mix some in the watering can, and then I would have to repeat the process dozens of times for a single watering session. For someone like me who has a tendency to neglect watering, the more simple I make the watering process, the better. The only reason I give fertilizer to these smaller plants from Tony is that I think they really need it due to the lack of nutrients in the soil they're currently in. That's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to purchase some of my hand-pollinated seeds, please send me an email mentioning your country, and I will reply with info, prices and photos. You'll find my email address in the description of this video, but I will also make it appear on the screen now. It's sanpedromastery@protonmail.com. All for now, take care my friends, and see you soon with another video.